Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're going to have the lesson that we would have had last week. But as you know, we spent that time offering up some prayers and sharing some thoughts about the persecution of the Baha'is in Iran. I'm going to play a recording that I made for last week's program. But I will stop it. It's long because remember, this is a two-part class on these 7 works that are in the book called Fountain of Wisdom, formerly called the Tablets of Bahá'u'lláh, written after the Aqdas. That's still the subtitle. But in any case, there's 7 works that are in it that we need to spend some time on. There are other works in that volume that we will spend time on in a future lesson when we get to the works dealing with the covenant. And that's, of course, the Tablet of Carmel and the Kitab-i-Ad, the Book of My Covenant. So tonight I'm going to play you that recording, which is a PowerPoint. Please let me know if for any reason you can't hear it. So let me see if I share screen and share sound. And you should see my desktop. Now, let me start playing and take a minute, and then it should start. The sound should start in a second, and then I'll mute myself. Class 69, Themes of the Major Works Revealed After the Aqdas. Part 1. Now, we may be able to say 7 works that we're going to look at in the collection that was originally called Tablets Revealed After the Kitab-i-Aqdas, and it was renamed Fountain of Wisdom, Tablets Revealed After the Kitab-i-Aqdas. The Fountain of Wisdom is a reference to the manifestation, and it comes from the Law Hikmat, a work we've already looked at. So we begin with the most holy tablet, the Law Aqdas, sometimes called the tablet to Christians. And we're going to begin with the story of the conversion of one who may have been the first Christian convert to the Baha'i faith. We don't know for sure. But it's a story that takes place at the time when Baha'u'lláh is being carried by steamer from Adrianople to, from Gallipoli actually, to Egypt and then to Aqdas. And if you remember, Nabil was imprisoned, and he had been promised by Baha'u'lláh that he would see Baha'u'lláh. And he looks out of his prison window and he sees the friends being transferred from one ship to another. And it is in this context and time that this conversion of Faris is occurring. A certain Christian physician, a Syrian by name of Faris, who had been put in the same prison as Nabil for financial reasons, became attracted to Nabil. At first, the former tried to convert the latter to Christianity, but instead Nabil gave his companion the tidings of the coming of the Father and the advent of the day of God. He disclosed to his eyes the light of the newborn faith and imparted to him the knowledge of his revelation. Soon, as a result of Nabil's teaching work, inspired by his spirit of detachment from this world and aided by his profound and intimate knowledge of the message of Baha'u'lláh. Now, this is Nabil. Remember, there are 2 Nabils. One is the historian, one the hand of the cause. And this is Nabil, the historian. Faris became assured of the truth of the cause. The fire of faith began to burn fiercely in his heart, and the love of Baha'u'lláh possessed his whole being. He was filled with joy and ecstasy. The gloom of the prison life vanished, and he found himself for the first time in the midst of paradise. Now, this is a narration about this event by Adib Tahirzadeh, in the revelation of Baha'u'lláh, and you can see the citation here from volume 3, page 10. After a short while, they were heartbroken to see the ship steaming away before Constantine could gain admittance. But amazingly, now Constantine is someone who's carrying a letter from Faris to Baha'u'lláh. But amazingly, after a few minutes, the ship stopped, and Constantine, who was in a rowing boat, reached it and went aboard. He handed the envelope to one of the attendants, who took it to Baha'u'lláh. The news of Nabil's whereabouts, and especially the letter of Faris, which was read aloud by Baha'u'lláh to those in his who had assembled in his presence. And as I say here, the letter is available if you'll look in volume 3, page 10, but it's too lengthy for us to read it here. We just want to here focus on what the results of this were and why it's relevant to the tablet to the Christians. Faris was probably the first Christian to embrace the faith of Baha'u'lláh. Through the radiance of Nabil's indomitable faith, and helped by his own knowledge of the Arabic language and of the Bible, Faris became a faithful believer with a deep understanding of the station of Baha'u'lláh. Faris devoted his time to teaching the cause among his own people. The Aqdas, the most holy tablet, otherwise known in the West as the tablet to the Christians, is reputed to have been revealed in his honor, but this cannot be substantiated. Up till now, it has not been possible to ascertain for whom this tablet was revealed. Now, this may have changed since the Tahirzadeh wrote this book, but I'm not aware of any further confirmation of this or whether or not this is true. But at any rate, it's relevant nonetheless. Prior to its revelation, Baha'u'lláh had addressed some tablets to people of Christian faith. Needless to say, we've looked at the letters to the various kings and rulers who were Christian. But the Aqdas seems to be the first major tablet to a believer of Christian background, and that is other than the kings and rulers. In this tablet, Baha'u'lláh proclaims his message to the Christian people. In clear and unequivocal terms, he declares his station to be that of the Father whose advent Christ had promised, and through whom the Spirit of truth has been manifested to man. He describes his supreme revelation in these words to the Christians, whom he addresses as followers of the Son. The river Jordan is joined to the most great ocean, and the sun and the holy veil crieth out, Here am I, O Lord my God. Whilst Sinai circleth round the house, and the burning bush calleth aloud, He who is the desired one is come in his transcendent majesty. Say, Lo, the Father is come, and that which ye were promised in the kingdom is fulfilled. This is the word which the Son concealed, when to those around him he said, Ye cannot bear it now. Now this, of course, is a very famous phrase. I have much to tell you, but you cannot bear it now. And Baha'is, of course, are very much aware of this phrase because it clearly indicates that insofar as concepts like progressive revelation, the concept of the unity of the manifestations, these were concepts that the Christians could not have readily understood at that time. And Christ was aware that it would be appropriate later to reveal this and many other things. So the succeeding manifestations of Muhammad, the Bab, and Baha'u'lláh would accomplish this. And when the appointed time was fulfilled and the hour had struck, the word shone forth above the horizon of the will of God. Beware, O followers of the Son, that ye cast it not behind your backs. Now, this casting behind the back is a phrase you'll hear often in the writings of Baha'u'lláh, and it doesn't mean literally, even though Napoleon is supposedly actually did this, just threw it away. Or at least that's my understanding, but it means simply ignore, obviously. Take ye fast hold of it. Better is this for you than all that ye possessed. Now, I wanted to spend just a minute with this phrase, here am I, here am I. We know what it means intuitively. It means that you're saying to God, I am ready. I recognize the truth and permit me to serve. I am ready to serve in whatever capacity you deem me worthy of serving. And so I just wanted to show you some of the origins of this phrase. It goes obviously back to the Old Testament, and it's in a number of places. It's said by Abraham to God, whether explicitly or implicitly, by Joseph to his father, by Moses to the burning bush, in the book of Samuel, and most prominently in the book of Isaiah. This is the quote from Isaiah, chapter 6, 8 through 9. Also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me. And he said, go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, and see ye indeed, but perceive not. This phrase is repeated by Christ when he's talking to his disciples, and they say, why do you speak in parables? And he says, because to you it has been given the capacity to understand the word of God, but seeing they see not, and hearing they hear not, talking about the Pharisees, that in effect they have all the capacity in the world to understand what it is he's saying, but they understand only on a literalist level. So going back to the tablet to Christians, in another passage he admonishes the Christians for not having recognized him and likens them to the Jews at the time of Christ. Consider those, and this is a quote from the tablet, who rejected the Spirit, Christ, when he came unto them with manifest dominion. How numerous the Pharisees who had secluded themselves in synagogues in his name, lamenting over their separation from him, talking about the Messiah. And yet when the portals of reunion were flung open and the divine luminary shone resplendent from the dayspring of beauty, they disbelieved in God, they exalted the mighty. They failed to attain his presence, and this is, of course, talking figuratively, his spiritual presence, notwithstanding that his advent had been promised them in the book of Isaiah, as well as in the books of the prophets and the messengers. Talking about the Jewish scholars, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and so on. And then to the concourse of monks. And of course, he addresses the monks later on in works we've already seen, both in the Suri Hakel and the letters to the Pope, and in the tablets that we looked at last class. If you choose to follow me, I will make you heirs of my kingdom. And if you transgress against me, I will in my long suffering endure it patiently. And I verily am the ever forgiving, the all merciful. Now notice the contrast between this and the tone of the Old Testament, where you have this sense of a vengeful God that you know, if you don't choose me or follow what I say, a grievous recompense will be yours. And but here he says, you know, if you transgress against me, I'll forgive it. But it's better for you if you understand what I'm saying and accept what I'm saying. Then a beatitude or a blessing constitutes the last part. And rather beautiful. I'll go ahead and read this because it's similar to, of course, the Beatitudes of Christ. Blessed are the peacemakers and so on. Say, blessed the slumberer who is awakened by my breeze. Blessed the lifeless one who is quickened through my reviving breaths. Blessed the eye that is solaced by my gazing at my beauty. Blessed the wayfarer who directeth his steps towards the tabernacle of my glory and majesty. Blessed the distressed one who seeketh refuge beneath the shadow of my canopy. Blessed the sore athirst who hasteth to attain the hasteneth to the soft flowing waters of my loving kindness. Blessed the insatiate soul who casteth away his selfish desires for love of me, and taketh his place at the banquet table which I have sent down from the heaven of divine bounty for my chosen ones. Blessed the abased one who layeth fast hold on the cord of my glory, and the needy one who entereth beneath the shadow of the tabernacle of my wealth. So that's the heart of the tablet to the Christians. Needless to say, it's well worth sharing with Christians who are investigating the faith, because it hits right at the heart of the concept of the return of Christ as promised in the New Testament by Christ himself. And of course, if they then want proof, then the Kitab-i-Igan is a proof where 3 verses from Matthew concerning the signs of that return which Baha'u'lláh says are symbolic and therefore were misunderstood or not understood. He explicates in great detail how each of those symbolic events has occurred. The second tablet in this volume that we have not looked at yet, the Tablet of the World, the Loidunya, revealed in honor of Aka Mirza Aka, Niruddin Mirza Ake Afnan, entitled Nuruddin and Afnan. And that's from Tahirzadeh again. His 4 volumes are so valuable in giving us background. And after you look, as I've said before, if you're studying a work, the first place to look to see what background information or contextual information you need to know, first place to look is God Passes By. But Tahirzadeh's work is probably the next place you want to look. And then another place, of course, what is at this point the sort of definitive biography of Baha'u'lláh, Baha'u'lláh, the King of Glory, by Hassan Balyuzi. The Tablet of the World addresses 2 hands of the cause, Ali Akbar and Amin, the trustee of the Hukuk-Quran. Amin means the trusted one. And in the second paragraph, he reveals this famous passage about them, which constitutes the beginning of the prayer for the hands of the cause. Light and glory, greeting and praise be upon the hands of his cause, through whom the light of fortitude hath shone forth, and the truth hath been established, that the authority to choose rest with God, the powerful, the mighty, the unconstrained, through whom the ocean of bounty hath surged, and the fragrance of the gracious favors of God, the Lord of mankind, hath been diffused. We beseech him, exalted is he, to shield them to the power of his host, to protect them through the potency of his dominion, and to aid them through his indomitable strength, which prevaileth over all created things. In the context of this is the events that were occurring in Persia with regard to the continued persecution of the Baha'is. And this account is from Baha'u'lláh, the King of Glory. He said, do not be sad, do not be downcast, do not let your hearts bleed. The sacred tree of the cause of God is watered by the blood of the martyrs. That sounds rather gruesome, but again, of course, the Baha'i concept of martyrdom is quite distinct from the connotation it unfortunately carries in the context of contemporary religious fanaticism. where martyrdom involves as much collateral damage as the martyr can do, because the martyr is trying to draw attention to a cause. Whereas the Baha'is are specifically forbidden from seeking martyrdom, that if it occurs, then, and of course in the case of the Baha'is, from the beginning it was, if you do not recant your faith and accept Islam, you will be martyred. Though in the case of the 7 martyrs of Yazd and other martyrdoms taking place, and of course this is sometime after the thousands upon thousands of Babis were martyred, but it continued, and of course still continues today. So the Blessed Perfection said, "This ingrate has done what has caused the eyes of the denizens of the Supreme Concourse to shed tears of blood. Only 32 years from that date, the rule of the Qajars came to an end." Now, this is referring, before long you will see, up here you'll see, before long you will see the name of the Qajars obliterated. Now, who are the Qajars? These are the family or lineage of Shahs, the Qajar dynasty, that is in control of Egypt until you have the constitutional rebellion. And of course, this occurs after the death of Bahá'u'lláh, but he foresees it and prophesies it, and he does here. And of course, 32 years from that date, the power was taken from the Shahs and given over to the hands of the people in the constitutional rebellion. The first tablet revealed after 9 days, Haji Mirza Habibullah writes, was the Loy Dunya, or Tablet of the World, with which Mirza Aka Jan was honored. Excuse me, Aka Mirza Aka was honored. That reference to Jalaluddin Dali can be read also in this tablet. The tyrant of the land of Yazd committed that which hath caused the concourse on high to shed tears of blood. A copy of the Tablet of the World in the handwriting of Zainul Mukarrabin was given by Bahá'u'lláh himself to Haji Mirza Buzurg, an elder brother of Haji Mirza Habibullah. So that's the context. In the work itself, you have the following observations. First, the Crimson Book is the Book of the Covenant. There's an allusion to the Crimson Book. What is the Crimson Book? Well, it's not a particular book, but it's referring to all those tablets that have to do with the covenant. And then these are some of, again, I've just excerpted from this tablet some of the points, the critical points that Baha'u'lláh makes. First, the Universal House of Justice should promote the lesser peace, which it is currently doing, of course. Second, languages must be reduced to one language to be taught in all schools of the world. Now, notice this is slightly different from what we have in the Aqdas itself, where you have this choice of either one language must be chosen from all the existing languages to be taught as a secondary language, or one must be created as a secondary language. But here you see the ultimate goal, at least my inference is, that the ultimate goal of this is that there be one language that is used not as an auxiliary language, but in time, and this is of course a long time, all the languages will, there'll be one language of planet Earth and one government and one script and so on, one system of weights and measures and so on the like. I had a lovely interaction in the Q&A in the last class with some members of the Esperanto League, and they sent me a lot of information about what is currently going on, and a very important statement that whether or not Esperanto is in the running to be that language, it doesn't matter so much as the fact that you find in that movement like-minded people who believe that this is an important objective, and for the same reasons as do the Baha'is, to achieve world unity. So the viability of Esperanto, whether it lies in its linguistic capabilities, may be more in assembling people who are striving for the same objective of world unity, and the realization that before you can have world unity, you've got to have world communication. Third, adherence to that which will promote fellowship, kindliness, and unity. Fourth, everyone should hand over to a trusted person a portion of what is earned for the training and education of children. Always this emphasis, whether in the wills of a person makes and so on, or the obligation of the parents and the obligation of the local community to see that the children have access to education. If the family or the parents are unable to do this, then, as they said here, they should provide for someone else to ensure it. Or then, if the parents are unwilling or unable, the community itself is obliged to do this. Fifth, a special regard must be paid to agriculture. This is a reordering of the hierarchy of social status that's described as you read more and more of the writings about the description of society as it will emerge under the auspices and guidance of the teachings of Baha'u'lláh in the future. So you have the money makers and the professionals making a great deal of money, maybe the lawyers, or once was the physicians, though now they are not so well off. But you will have, in effect, a prioritizing of professions according to the service they render to society. And so teachers and farmers are at the highest levels of value in terms of what they contribute to society. Although it hath been mentioned in the fifth place, unquestionably it precedeth the others. Notice that. That's Baha'u'lláh speaking. So in other words, while I'm listing it fifth, it doesn't mean it's fifth in order of priority. Agriculture is highly developed in foreign lands. However, in Persia, it hath been so far been grievously neglected. Now, of course, he's talking here this is after the Aqdas, so he's talking in the latter half of the 19th century, where the Industrial Revolution has totally transformed agriculture in the West. And you have the cotton gin and all kinds of other devices for, of course, that's not agriculture per se, but it is involved in crops and so on. You have all kinds of developments for the ability to feed the peoples of the world. And so he's saying Persia is far behind in developing this kind of enlightened form of farming. It is hoped that His Majesty the Shah, and notice again, he always speaks to and about the Shah in the most courteous of terms. And of course, this is very intentional, that no one may perceive or ascribe Baha'u'lláh or the Baha'is as being disloyal, or in any way bad citizens. Being a good citizen, the reputation of this is so important, and still is. May God assist him by His grace. Will turn his attention to this vital and important matter. Now, of course, even though he knows the Shah will probably not do this, this is for all time. In other words, this message isn't just for this time and this place. The unbelievers, he goes on to say, and the faithless have set their minds on four things. First, the shedding of blood. Second, the burning of books. Third, the shunning of the followers of other religions. Fourth, the extermination of other communities and groups. Now, however, through the strengthening grace and potency of the Word of God, these four barriers have been demolished. Now, he doesn't mean they actually have been insofar as literally that these no longer occur. He's saying, by my ordinance, the future is set, and these no longer are allowed. These clear injunctions have been obliterated from the tablet, and brutal dispositions have been transmuted into spiritual attributes. So the very converse of each of these occurs in the laws and guidance of Bahá'u'lláh. And then an interesting thing, and I mentioned it before, the system of government which the British people have adopted in London appeareth to be good, for it is adorned with the light of both kingship and of consultation of the people. And of course you have a monarchy, but you have the parliament either in an advisory role. Of course it evolves where the parliament really has the real power. And we discussed this last time in the Q&A about why does Baha'u'lláh give such honor to kingship when the design of government he has set forth in the Aqdas does not involve monarchies or any individual positions of power other than the guardianship. And of course, the succession of Abu Baha, but those aren't governmental positions. Those are positions of guidance. And notice he doesn't say this is the best form of government. He simply says this is it seems to be a good thing relative to other forms of government. He gives a topical allusion, and a topical allusion simply means a reference to something that's taking place at the time. Someone had published an article called The Sure Handle, and it was against the faith. So Baha'u'lláh reveals a prayer for the author of this work to say, and this individual, Jamaluddin Afghani, he was an enemy of the faith and one of the originators of the constitutional movement. The scheming Afghani, whose relentless hostility and powerful influence had been so gravely detrimental to the progress of the faith in the Near Eastern countries, was, after a checkered career filled with vicissitudes, stricken with cancer, and having had a major part of his tongue cut away in an unsuccessful operation, perished in misery. Now, I guess you could say this kind of seems to hearken back to an Old Testament view of if you do something wrong, God will reach in and ruin your life. I don't think it should be read that way or understood that way. My understanding is that when you do wrong, you suffer the consequences. That justice and correct behavior bring about felicitous results because they're aligned with the law of reality. And the law of reality is that if you do that which is good for you, whether you're talking about physical nutrition or you're talking about moral behavior, it will bring you good results. Whereas if you do things that are injurious to your health, spiritual or physical, you will suffer the consequence of those actions. So I don't think we ought to read those things as necessarily the hand of God bringing about vengeance. Rather, the laws that God has set in motion mean that if you, again, I used this analogy I have been since I first became a Baha'i, because it's a good one. And that is, if you may not like the law of gravity, and you may choose not to believe in the law of gravity, but if you jump off a building, the law of gravity will bring about consequences that will be ruinous to you. And so you don't break the laws of God, you break yourself on the laws of God. Baha'u'lláh notes how he has revealed the precise remedy for the world. He concludes this tablet by observing, O people of God, righteous men of learning who dedicate themselves to the guidance of others are freed and well guarded from the promptings of a base and covetous nature, are in the sight of him who is the desire of the world, stars of the heaven of true knowledge. It is essential to treat them with deference. They are indeed fountains of soft-flowing water, stars that shine resplendent, fruits of the blessed tree, exponents of celestial power, and oceans of heavenly wisdom. Happily is he that followeth them. Verily, such a soul is numbered in the book of God, the Lord of the mighty throne, among those with whom it shall be well. So that's the end of that tablet. And let me take a sip of my tea. And we come to the tablet of Maksud, the law Maksud. There is an introductory note that is worth understanding. It's in the book, and it talks about this literary device that Baha'u'lláh uses often. He does it in the Tablet of the Holy Mariner, which was revealed, remember, when they were just about to be exiled from Baghdad, and he does it in many other works, where it sounds as if Mirza Jan himself is speaking. And it's interesting to me in that I think it may be a way of attesting Mirza Jan, because while you may know this, you may not, at the death of Baha'u'lláh, Mirza Jan becomes a covenant breaker, a rather grievous one, even though he was elderly and couldn't do much. He sided with Mirza Muhammad Ali, the half-brother of Abdul Baha, who tried to usurp the power of Abdul Baha. You wonder, how could the one who was the first to believe, other than Abdul Baha, in Baha'u'lláh, and his amanuensis, remember we have that wonderful revelatory script he used, shorthand he used. How could one so close become alienated from the very faith he had served so admirably? Well, of course, it's a lesson to everyone. That sort of one way of explaining it, I think, was explained to me by a Baha'i many years ago. It's sort of like a pyramid effect. The higher you go up on a pyramid, the less space you have to maneuver. Or to put it another way, the higher up you go, the greater chance there is of falling. Less room to go wrong. Another term I've heard that explains this somewhat is that the closer you are to the manifestation, the more tempted you are to, that is, the closer physically you are to the manifestation, the more likely you are to perceive the manifestation or come to think of the manifestation as simply another human being, because you see the manifestation eat and sleep and get sick and so on, feel angry, feel sad, and so on. And you see the human dimension of the manifestation, then you forget the spiritual dimension. So the Tablet of Maksud is addressed to Mirza Maqsud, an earlier believer living at that time in Damascus in Jerusalem. It is in response to a letter received from him, and remember, as I've said before, so many of the wonderful tablets are responses to letters, requests sent to Bahá'u'lláh. The Loy Hikmat we discussed in that way, the Kitabi Igan is that. And so he often honors these people for asking questions because the answers, he says, are for all people. And so in effect, you've done a service by asking this question, because now the whole world will benefit from the answer. And of course, some answered questions by Al-Baha is like that, isn't it? You have sitting around this table after dinner where Baha'u'lláh would be, Abdu'l-Baha would be asked these questions, but the questions were so good. They were at the heart of basically every theological and philosophical question one could pose. You have this very well-known phrase. We see it in Gleanings, man is the supreme talisman. Lack of a proper education hath, however, deprived him of that which he doth inherently possess. Through a word proceeding out of the mouth of God, he was called into being. By one word more, he was guided to recognize the source of his education. By yet another word, his station and destiny were safeguarded. The great being saith, regard man as a mine rich in gems of inestimable value. Education can alone cause it to reveal its treasures and enable mankind to benefit therefrom. So this is often quoted because it's saying that we are, each of us and collectively, of great potential, gems of inestimable value, but we have to be mined. It's very much like taking a rough diamond out of a diamond mine, and it doesn't reveal its splendor until it's polished and refined by being tested, if you will, by going through various rigorous processes. Well, regard man as a mine rich in gems, but until you are educated and enlightened, those gems don't illuminate or refract the beautiful attributes latent within him. Then this beautiful... Okay, friends, I'm going to stop sharing there. And as you could see, there's a lot more to go and more after that. So it'll take us at least one more class to finish these tablets that we have not looked at yet.